Alrighty, time for lecture 2. We're going to go a little bit deeper into the consumption side of it, focusing specifically on sort of the events in and around the arena. So this reading was really focused on sort of the venue itself and how it's changed over time. They look at it in terms of three sort of components. First is the place of consumption, and here we can think of it in a couple different ways. One is sort of the consumption of the experience. So buying tickets, going to opening day, just sort of the experience of being there in the moment. But then also, once there in the arena, it is a shopping mall of consumption. The second is the spectacle of sort of the blur of entertainment that we are constantly a part of, or constantly demanding more and more entertainment, and sort of the impact that type of culture has on modern sports. And then the third component is fan performance. So this is where the fans are sort of enacting their fan identity for each other. Here is also sort of that fan performance gets folded back into and becomes a part of the spectacle itself. So when you're in the arena, part of the sort of that just constant barrage of entertainment, part of that is the other fans themselves sort of doing things and all taking part in this sort of the spectacle of performance. So the second and third items really start blurring together at some point. So let's first look at consumption. The reading breaks it down into kind of 4 areas of consumption. The first we talked about is sort of that I already mentioned is the experience itself. So just buying your ticket, going, viewing the game, admiring the craft, the athleticism, the strategy, the experience of sort of hot dog on opening day, or whatever sort of the venue you might be at, sort of that first look as you enter through the tunnel into the actual seating area, that first look of the field or first look of the court, kind of just the experience of attending the game. The second is integration. So this is really grouping fans together. Sort of a home team, away team, there's a smaller away section type of thing. Third is classification, which is more of identity performance, where we're putting on apparel. So we might be wearing our Philadelphia 76ers jersey, we have foam fingers, we have a ball cap on, any number of other things that you might be doing, depending on the team that you're cheering for. And then the fourth type of consumption is really just play, is what the reading calls it, and this is socializing. So sort of performing identity, but also just sort of connecting with others on a kind of an interpersonal type of level, talking about the sport, talking about the athletes on the field, talking about the game as it plays out in front of you, really engaging with other fans around you. So these 4 different types of consumption are all sort of wrapped into this bigger experience of what happens when we attend the arena. Now, one of the relatively recent trends, maybe in the last 10 or 20 years for sports venues, is sort of what the reading calls a mallification of the arena, where we attend the sporting event there. Obviously, we see the field and the players and the coaches, or the court and the players and the coaches. But beyond that, it has become sort of the officially sanctioned mall of the home team, which generally speaking means more expensive apparel, more expensive memorabilia than if you bought it on Amazon or bought it even just a couple blocks away outside the venue. And so here, the consumer society sort of element of it has created this sort of the consumption as part of the experience itself. So it isn't just enough to attend the game. You have to attend the game and have a beer and a hot dog, or attend the game and have a Coke, or attend the game and buy a hat or buy a jersey. And so the consumption as an act of fandom is just sort of built into it, and oftentimes this consumption beyond just attending the game, the consumption of buying something while you're there, is often a rite of passage as fathers or mothers bring young fans or potential young fans to the game. It's always, well, we went there and then we got this as a souvenir. So there's always this sort of like having to buy something else extra while you're at the arena. Outside the arena, of course, there's lines of vendors selling foods and drinks and apparel up and down the streets around the stadiums, bars, restaurants, all of that. So there's always been this sort of consumer kind area surrounding the arena, this consumption area surrounding the arena, but very much so has become this kind of a mall type of experience, where it's almost a leisure sort of pleasurable experience attending the event because you get to do shopping while you're at the sporting event. And that brings us to our second discussion item of the week. Take a few minutes, if you would, and talk about the memorable games that you've been to. Not just every game that you go to, but the most memorable ones that you've gone to. So whether that's maybe a championship game or a playoff game or just a really big regular season event. Talk about the games that you went to and talk through the acts of consumption that you had. So obviously you had tickets, but maybe there's also travel or hotel, flights, other entertainment elements involved with it, either pre-game or post-game, apparel that you bought for it or during the event, food and drink. Just talk through all of the types of consumption that you did for those memorable games, or if you have one really memorable one, that's fine. Just go with sort of the one that sticks out the most. So take a minute, pop over to your discussion post, complete discussion item 2, and then come on back to the lecture. Now, onto the spectacle element, which was the second of the three. So a lot of scholarship over the years has examined sort of the spectacle of society or of culture. And you might think of this as just sort of our constant need to be entertained. That if we're sitting in a waiting room waiting to see the doctor, we can't just sort of sit there and pass the time with our thoughts or with conversation, even with those around us. We always need magazines or need our cell phone or need something always sort of entertaining us more and more and more. It's all about entertainment and sort of distraction, if we want to think of it in terms of daily me type of processes. And in the ever-broadening array of sports entertainment, there's a pressure on sports to always be interesting, always be entertaining. So this moves us beyond the actual game itself. And major league organizations, professional organizations, are very aware of our constant need of entertainment. So the game itself is there, but there's so many other things built into it to sort of distract us, to sort of entertain us for a few moments until the next play. So it starts well before the game, tailgating and things like that. Once in the arena, we have warm-ups and hitting maybe home runs in BP. The national anthem and a big flyover presentation. The game itself, we have honoring legends or honoring vets between quarters or maybe during TV timeouts, cheerleaders, vendors themselves walking up and down amongst the seats, halftime performances, jumbotron hype videos, entertaining PA announcers, having somebody dressed up like a hot dog race somebody dressed up like a burger or french fries. The freeze race is highly entertaining, but just all of these sort of add up to the sort of the spectacle of attending a live sports event. That there's going to be sort of built into it these constant sort of different things that are coming up. Depending on the sport, it might be between quarters or during TV timeouts or between innings. There's always going to be something coming up. Some sort of fan engagement, throwing out T-shirts, cheerleaders, dance teams, halftime performers. There's always going to be something up next. So you're never just sort of sitting idly by waiting for the next play or the next quarter to start. There's always sort of the next big thing, the next thing coming up. It's all part of sort of the spectacle. And the idea of the spectacle brings us to our third discussion item of the week. Baseball is boring. So there's mounting pressure amongst fans or sports media analysts toward baseball that they need to speed up the pace of play. And that's really a euphemism for saying that baseball is boring. There's too much downtime between pitches or between sort of exciting plays that are happening in baseball. First, I'd just like you to respond to this about the idea of baseball being boring. Should sports, or should baseball specifically, if you'd like to talk about that, stick to traditions or break away from traditions in an effort to gain new fans with this sort of modern spectacle, the palette of modern spectacle, or this constant need for entertainment? And then lastly, touch on if baseball actually does end up speeding up the game, pitch clocks, things like that. Do you think it'll end up bringing any new fans in? And explain. Take a few moments, pop over to your discussion post, answer this third discussion item, and then come back to the lecture. One thing we should note about the spectacle is that the fans themselves are very much part of the spectacle. So when the third element of the reading talked about fans' performances, chants, waves, booing, cheering. All of that is really part of the spectacle. So dressing up for the game. So my favorite team, the Iowa Hawkeyes, has a blackout game. They do all gold for a game. Sometimes, some seasons they do all white. Many times they do Iowa Hawkeye stripes, where they're a section of gold, a section of black, a section of gold. And then there's also always in every game, Jumbotron shots of the crowd, the kiss cam, all of that kind of stuff. And all of this is really making the fans part of the spectacle. They're all doing their sort of performance of fans, chanting in unison, doing the wave, booing, cheering in unison. But it's all really adding into this element of the spectacle. So just know that as they break into that third section of fans performing, it's sort of a spectacle-based performance as well as what they're talking about. And then also, of course, there is the sort of social interaction, social identity performance of it. So knowing all of the chants or knowing when to cheer, when to boo, how to dress accordingly for the game, all of that is really a performance showcasing that this is my identity, this is where I belong with this group, treat me this certain way because I'm one of you. That really falls in line with a lot of the readings and discussions we've had throughout the semester. All right, and that's the last slide, so feel free to move on to Lecture 3.